let's dig in. Today, you are all here trying to solve for our fragmented policies and practices. If you don't feel like you have fragmented policies or practices, teach us your ways, tell us what you're doing right, because we are all definitely seeing a lot of those fragmented policies and practice, and we are just trying to figure out how do we do things a little bit smarter. So today we're going to talk through some of the challenges that we see, why our policies are fragmented and why that leads to fragmented practice. Then we're going to walk you through a workflow of how we recommend you take those policies and turn them into really sustainable, practical practices. And then we're going to give you a chance to dig in and start doing some of this practice work on your end. Specific skills that we're targeting today, problem solving, priority mapping, best practice alignment, and collective efficacy. So let's get going. So we're going to start with a poll here, and we're all about transparency. We're all about honesty. So the poll question number 1 is, how many tabs or windows do you typically have open on your computer? So you should see that a poll was just added. So how many tabs or windows do you typically have on your computer? And I'm going to go ahead and vote, and I will be transparent. I am a 7+. I am absolutely a 7+. I'm going to be honest, I'm more of a 13+. So I'm going to go ahead and submit my results. All right, about almost 50% of us, well, we're at 42%. Are at 13+. I kind of love that we don't have any 1 to 3 years here, because I just secretly resent people that don't have any tabs or windows open on their computer. They live a life that is probably much easier than mine. All right, thanks for having a little bit of fun with us. So the majority of us, I would say about 43.8% of us currently have 13+ tabs open on our computer at a given time. So as I'm thinking about all of my tabs and my windows on my computer, that reminds me of all of the different practices that I currently see in schools. So we have so many different practices. We have clinical services and school mental health plans. We have counseling. We have behavior interventions. We have academic interventions. We have IEPs and 504s. Do any of you feel like you have so many different practices? You have so many tabs open in your brain, in your practice as a school practitioner? We believe that all of those fragmented policy or practices are due to our fragmented policies. So as educational leaders, we are given policies from legislature, and we're told, hey, you need to act on this policy. And so what we do, just like Britt talked about in that early starting session, is we move really, really quickly and we find a way to adhere to that policy. So what we've done, and why we have so many of these different practices, is we've kind of responded to all of these policies and just thrown it into a practice. And now all of a sudden we have a million tabs open. We have a million different practices that we are trying to solve for, which, as we know, doesn't feel good for adults and isn't getting kids what they actually need. So a fragmented practice leads to fragmented support. As a school counselor, I would oftentimes be working with a student, and there's one situation that I always think about when I'm talking about this, which is that I had a student and I was working with him on coping skills. When you feel like you want to run out of the room, try this, this, and this, right? And we were making a lot of progress. Then one day I saw this same student running laps around the library, and I said, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And the student said, well, my classroom teacher says that whenever I have this urge to go run around, I have a tornado pass, and I can just go run around the building. And I said, that makes sense, because what we have here is we have fragmented support. We haven't built, or I hadn't built, a streamlined way to communicate the support that I am providing to a student. So then you have other teachers, you have other administrators, everyone is trying their own strategy with the same student, which is leading to fragmented support, also leading to an increase of frustration for adults, and is not getting that student that really targeted skill that we are hoping for that student. So what do we do? right? We all know this is happening. So let's think about how that policy to practice workflow currently looks. So to give you some basic definitions, our policy, it's a principle or an action that has been codified and adopted by a school board, state legislature, or federal legislature. It is essentially that long list of policies that you have that are saying, these are things you need to do as a building leader. These are things that you need to do as a teacher. These are things that have to happen. So what we do when we have that policy come across our desk, we turn it into a practice. So the practice is a written record detailing how that policy will be implemented in the school setting. Essentially, the policy is saying, this is what we need you to do, and the practice is saying, this is how we're going to do it. But when we're moving too quickly, we take all of these different policies and we create a bunch of different practices out of them. So here's some examples for you. The state legislature has crafted and passed a threat assessment statute. So we know that that's a policy. So the practice is that the school district develops a workflow in which safety plans will be developed when specific criteria are met. So we have our policy that says it's really important that we do this. And now we've built our strong, clear practice to make sure that that happens. Another example is about FERPA. We talk about FERPA a lot at Branching Minds. FERPA states that parents and guardians have the right to inspect and review a student's educational records. So we know that we have a policy that says we need to grant access for parents and guardians for our students' educational records. So the practice that we've created out of that is that the school district develops a form for parents and guardians and identifies a point of contact for compiling that information. I want you to think about for a second, we have that policy. What would happen if we hadn't built that really clear practice based on that policy? Think about that. Put it in the chat if you're interested. Maybe some of you are living that life right now, but we know we have this policy. But in absence of that clear practice, it's going to create chaos. We're also not going to be adhering to that policy. We're not going to know who our point person is. We're not going to have that form developed ahead of time. So essentially, a lot of the times we're probably going to fall flat on that policy. We're not going to be acting on that policy as equitably and as intentionally as we need to be. So as we are starting to explore this relationship between policy and practice, in your participant activity guide on page 3, there is an opportunity for you to kind of flex those muscles to think about the relationship between policy and practice. This isn't a test. Michelle and I were talking about this prior to the session. I don't know the specific policy that directly aligns with these practices, which to me is indicating, hey, I need to build that stronger bridge between my policy and practice. So this is just an opportunity for you to start priming the pump, getting your brain going to think about that policy and practice. We're going to give you about 4 minutes in breakout rooms to access this document and see if you can figure out what policy or what practice aligns with the other. So again, 4 minutes. You can use page 3. Page 2 provides you with some more of the kind of definitions and resources that we've just provided for you. So 4 minutes, and then we'll bring you back. Michelle's going to throw you into some rooms.
I think we have about 50 participants around there. So I'm going to just create 9 rooms. Okay, let's see if this works.
All right, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I think we are good to go.
Christina, do you see the little timer up top? Or do I only see it?
No, now I see it. Did you see it? I messaged you. I said, I'm scared to talk. It's so
That's very
disorienting.
helpful.
It's good for us. It's good for our brains to use a different platform, you know, it really,
Mhm.
it's very, very good for me.
We are flexible.
We're so flexible. How did it go earlier?
I was the only one in my group, so I returned to the main room, Michelle Martino. Hmm. Sorry about that, Michelle. But thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it looks like the other rooms have about 3 or 4. Michelle, do you wanna add Michelle to another room?
Well,
Wonder if we're able to do that.
I don't know if I'm looking here at the controls. Sorry about that, Michelle. We
If
are
you're
new to this platform, so while I could easily do this in Zoom, I'm not sure that I know how to do that here. I'm looking to see.
If you're anything like me, Michelle, maybe you're a little relieved. Sometimes it's nice to not be in a breakout room and just have a little brain space. So we have about a minute left. So if you want to just hang out in the main room, that's totally fine. If you have any questions about the activity, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just give you a little bit of space.
Okay, I'm getting an update here that they're going to end, so I think everyone will automatically come back.
Perfect. I love the timer on this. That's so
Mhm.
nice.
Okay.
All right, I see our viewers increasing, which means y'all are coming back. It's good to see you. So now that we have kind of put our brain to that test, really explored if we have a clear understanding of how all of those different practices, all of those different tabs relate to a policy, we're going to move forward and start thinking a little bit about how this relates to data. So, Michelle, I actually have another poll for you. If you can open that up, the poll question is, how many different systems do you have for student data? Perhaps that is directly correlated with how many tabs you have open on your web browser. But please answer that poll question. How many different systems do you have for student data? How many different places do you go to enter in or view any student data? All righty, I see about our 7+ data systems is increasing as we go. So just like our tabs, right? We have so many different systems that we use for data. We have data in so many different places, but how does that help us think? That is why we so strongly believe in branching minds, because it helps take that data from all of those different places and it helps you make really clear data-driven decisions based on that data. We're really relying on educators and classroom teachers especially to draw so many conclusions based on the data that's in front of them. And we love that we are able to provide some tools and some strategies that are going to really be able to help you figure out how to think about that data. So as we're thinking about data, it really relates to our practices, right? We're collecting all this data, but do we know why we're collecting that data? What specific data practices do we have in place that are helping us adhere to those policies, while we're also remembering that the ultimate goal is to move beyond compliance and toward best practice. So we have all of these policies that are saying these are things that we have to do to be in compliance. Many of them are very, very important to meet the needs of students. All of those policies have turned into practices that we feel like we're just complying to complete. We are not actually able or equipped to do a lot of that deep thinking, that deep work to really think about how we take that data and what's best for students. So what happens when we have data in a million different places, we have so many different data practices, is our problems start as one person's problem, and then it becomes somebody else's problem. So I say, okay, this student has a problem that I can help solve. And then when I'm done, I'm going to pass that student off to another adult in the building who's going to help solve that problem. How many of us see that happening in schools all the time? So the problem belongs to me, then the problem belongs to somebody else. So what Branching Minds does, if we decrease our number of practices and really streamline them to make them smarter, we're all going to be working together to support the needs of our students. It's not solely going to be my problem is over here and your problem is over here. The whole goal is to align these practices together. So how do we do that? Let's move forward. Turkey sandwich. I love a good turkey sandwich. When I'm making my dream perfect turkey sandwich, I put lettuce, tomatoes, turkey. Obviously, I put ketchup on my turkey sandwich. I put anchovies on my turkey sandwich. Now, I'm sure if I could see your cameras, you would all be like, what? Oh my gosh, who puts ketchup and anchovies on their turkey sandwich? Michelle earlier today said, I do not put mayonnaise on my turkey sandwich. So already we're learning what started as what we all have a similar definition to of this is what a turkey sandwich is. We all truly define our turkey sandwiches in different ways. So we think we have a practice and we think we've explained it really, really clearly, but everyone is looking at that practice just like they're looking at a turkey sandwich in a different way. So as we're thinking about building up these practices, we need to think more specifically about how do we define what goes into that turkey sandwich. So first we start with the why and the goal. We understand truly what problem is this going to address? How is this going to positively impact our students? Then we think about the right people. Who do you need at the table to help you build that turkey sandwich? Who's the supplier? Who's going to make the sandwich? Who's going to clean up after that sandwich? Once we've done that, we focus on changing actions by scale. Is this an easy lift? Is this a large lift? How are we going to successfully coach and teach everyone in our building how to make that turkey sandwich that we've already defined, and we've identified who is going to be leading that turkey sandwich project? Sometimes I wish working in schools was as simple as making a turkey sandwich, but we know it's so much more complicated than that. So your final activity, your final chance to really dig into this practice and policy work is back into that participant guide. Challenge yourself to think about what is a policy that you know of, or what is that's either new or a policy that you know exists, but you're not exactly sure what the practice is that's associated with it. Think about what that new policy is. Why is it happening? What's the source of the policy? What problem does it aim to solve? Who's involved? And what changes need to be made in order to turn that policy into practice? In your participant guide, there are actually 3 blank sheets of this page in that guide for you to be able to try this on with different policies. So do a little bit more brain stretching with us this morning. We're going to give you about 5 minutes to complete this in your breakout rooms. Again, thinking about what is that policy that you feel like your practice is just not aligned strong enough to it. It's just not clear enough why we're asking people to do what we're asking them to do. And we're always here for questions.
I just went ahead and opened the rooms. I probably should have given people a little bit of a warning.
I think it was a beautiful, I thought it was a really
Beautiful,
nice.
quick. It was a very quick, efficient transition.
That's what we're all about with our micro sessions, man. See, we still have about 7 people in the main room.
I didn't get put into a room. Oh dear. I am not seeing how to do that.
Is there a flag at the top of your screen that is saying join a breakout room? Elizabeth or Jacqueline? No. No, there was the first time. Interesting. Thanks, Ashley. Ashley's going to reach out to our tech gurus to see if there's a way to add people into rooms. But if there's not, and you just want to think through this activity on your own, that's totally fine as well. About 2.5 minutes.
I wonder if, because I reduced the number of rooms, if
it left people in the main room.
Yeah, if I'm wondering if Elizabeth and Jacqueline happened to be in room 9 last time, that's what happened.
So we can talk about it in this main room, Michelle. When you look at this document, thanks, Jacqueline. We'll talk about it too here in case you want to join our conversation too. I'm trying to think about a new policy that we used in our example this morning when we were working through this. Do you remember what we had talked about?
I had mentioned Connecticut's read to learn policy that has just come out. As an example, and I don't know if I'm calling that exactly what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was something I'm pretty sure it was read to learn.
Okay. Do you know a lot about that?
I don't.
I don't know a lot about that. And that's such a perfect example, right? Of, we know that this policy is important. And I think what you had talked about earlier today is that in the schools that you were working with, every kind of department took what they needed from that policy and they said, okay, I'm going to grab onto this. I'm going to create my own practice out of this policy. But what that's probably leading to, again, is so many different practices going on. And everyone's probably doing something right, but we're not taking the time to unite that together.
Exactly. And so when we create a form for one piece or one department, and then we have a form for the other department, it feels very duplicative in nature. Because every department is looking at that policy and only looking through their lens and not that comprehensive landscape of how this affects our entire school system, but rather how this is affecting my language learners or my special education students or my SEL programming, right?
Right. So and at Branching Minds, we believe that all of our students all students are all of ours, right? So when we're not building those really clear practices and having that gigantic alignment at that school-wide level, it's easy to say, oh, this is a me problem, this is a you problem, and everyone's working in those silos. And at the end of the day, what if we're not actually in line with that policy?
Yes. Yeah. I believe everyone's back, Christina.
Perfect. All right. So we are wrapping up here. A few things for you to remember. Policies exist for a reason. And they are intended to solve problems. So when I start to get frustrated because I have so many things that I have to do, I try and slow down and I remember that policy is there to solve a problem. That policy is there to make a difference for students or for staff or for families. So if you're ever feeling like you don't know why you're being asked to do something, I encourage you to ask the people that are telling you that directive, what problem is this trying to solve? And then stories resonate, similar to what I was just saying. By doing the research and exploring why you think a policy is in place, why a practice is in place, you understand a story behind it, that can be that motivational factor to really help you get through. And then finally, remember that communication is a discipline. The theme of today seems to really be slow down. Slow down, think about how you're communicating those practices, think about how you're communicating why that practice is tied to a policy. And that the overall goal is that we are working smarter, not harder. And we also believe that Branching Minds is a huge tool to help you do that. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I know you have one more mini session to head to. So we hope you've enjoyed this pre-session learning today. A few kind of quick housekeeping notes for you is that you will receive a email with all of the pre-conference materials. For the regular conference, those materials will exist directly in this platform, but because our pre-conference was limited, you will be receiving all of the materials from all of the different sessions, including the ones you weren't able to attend, in an email later. We hope you enjoy the conference. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.